Namaskar, greetings from the Temple of Fine Arts Coimbatore. The pandemic is raging on in the country, and our thoughts are with everyone who has been going through physically, mentally, directly, indirectly. And our thoughts and prayers are with you. And we feel kind of our duty also to keep in touch and pray for you through our music and dance as well. And we'd like to post something also so that our minds are taken away at least briefly during this time. And today we would like to bring you something different than usual music and dance that we offer. I'm SM Anand, a sitarist here at Temple of Fine Arts, and today I'm going to be in conversation with a very young and versatile musician. He is actually a Carnatic violinist, but it'll be extremely unfair if I just stop the description with that because he's so much more and he does so much more. Today, I don't need to say this because he holds his own on any stage in the world today, but out of love, respect, and adoration, I would also like to mention that he is the son of the great, legendary Dr. L. Subramaniam. Today we have with us Shri Ambi Subramaniam. Namaskaram, Ambi. Welcome, although virtually, to Temple of Fine Arts. How have you been?
Yeah, all good. I think, like you said, during this time, we're all kind of trying to find ways to kind of cope with whatever is happening. And I think at this time, it's important to kind of try to be help to anybody we can at this moment. And just I just hope that everyone's able to kind of get through this current situation. And our thoughts and prayers are with everyone who's kind of going through this terrible tragedy.
Absolutely. So I kept the introduction very short, quite intentionally, because people would want to hear more from you rather than me. So I'll just start by asking you something like I think is very commonly perceived. There's a phrase in English which goes, born with the silver spoon. So people would kind of assume that you would have been born with a silver bow in your hand. But how was it actually? Like, did you choose the violin, or the violin chose you, or was the violin already chosen for you?
Well, I think when you look at all of this, exposure is critical. So I would say the answer to that, I would think, would be a combination of all of them. Because I think for somebody to kind of choose something as a profession or take that up, there needs to be a number of things that kind of fall in place. And I think it'll be naive to think otherwise. So I think yes, there was of course a lot of interest, but there was also a lot of exposure, and I think we were all quite fortunate to kind of be in the presence of so many amazing artists, apart from our parents, of course, who were at home, and you kind of see that rigor and dedication every day and see how hard they work, even when they've kind of reached a certain level. And you hear so many things on the outside. So when you meet other people, you hear positive things about your parents, about how hard they've worked, or how what kind of life they lead and all of that. But then you also kind of see the life off stage, which is very, very important. And you kind of realize that, okay, fine, if you want to be a musician, or if you want to do anything well, really, you have to put in these number of hours. And it's not just this kind of glamorous life on stage where you're on stage and so many people see you, and then you get this level of fame or whatever it is that you kind of see on the outside. But it is kind of that kind of consistent work and kind of the work that you put in, and are you a better artist now than you were 6 months ago? Are you able to offer something new? Are you improving all the time? So I think those things become very, very important. So I think those kind of lessons really, really helped. And of course, I was drawn to the violin, and as I think violin is an instrument that as you get better and better, you enjoy it more and more. I think the kind of first 6 months are probably the hardest, because to get a nice tone, to get a kind of a basic sound that is pleasing or that makes you happy may take a little bit of time. So I think that's very important at that point to have somebody, a guru, mentor, parent, kind of guiding you through that phase. And then once you start enjoying the sound, then it's a whole different experience.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. When I started sitar, I was so thankful I had frets. I always wondered how without frets, where how. So yeah, so you mentioned exposure. So right from the time you were born, music would have been in the household. So what is your earliest recollection of music in whatever form from wherever?
Well, I think there were a lot of times or a lot of memories of kind of my parents either singing or playing at home. Those kind of experiences. Of course, I used to also my father used to take us all for concerts, and I remember there was one tour, I think, of the US where he took all three of us, my sister and brother and I. And I was very, very young, and I was not the easiest kid to handle. So I used to always go and start fighting with my brother and all of that. So he decided, and he was kind of looking after all three of us, and he had to play all these shows. And I mean, now I look at it as a totally different kind of perspective. You see the audience, you have the organizers, you have that pressure of wanting to play well yourself, all of that. And then I was just there as a kid, making everybody's life miserable. So at that point, I remember he used to say, okay, either it was a long tour. So one day, my brother would be on stage with the tambura, and then the next day I would be on stage with the tambura. One reason, of course, was so that we would kind of be involved with the music, but the other main reason was that we wouldn't fight with each other backstage. Yeah, totally. So, but I think those kind of experiences you still remember now, and those memories are very fond to me.
Great. So, what was your view on academics? Was it important to you? How did you fare in academics, balancing both your music and that?
So I think to our family it is always very important. My father is a medical doctor, and I think I remember one thing he used to always say is doing well at one thing isn't an excuse to do badly at something else. So that was kind of his view always. So I remember during a 10th standard board exams or something, there was one concert that came up. So it was a solo concert. I think I was playing about an hour and a half or something. And to be very honest, I didn't do a very great job. And I wasn't practicing a lot. I was kind of focusing on my next exam and all of that. So I finished the concert, everything, and then my dad was like, today wasn't that great. What happened? So I'm like, honestly, exams are there. I've not had time to prepare and all of this. I gave him one long lecture, And then he just said one line. He's like, "Will you explain this to the audience?" Then that was the end of the discussion. So I think like both of them are very important to do, and I think he's always kind of both my parents, they've kind of focused on that. So I ended up doing an MBA in finance as well, and then a PhD in music and all of that. But I think if you're able to kind of prioritize early, then that kind of becomes a little easier.
Yeah. So you mentioned your father giving you a review of your performance. So how, as a guru and as a father, so was he, as a guru, was he more stricter or more lenient because you're his son? And from your view, how did you manage to balance being a son and the Sishya also?
Well, I think as a guru, he is definitely more strict than he is as a parent. Uh, Whether he was more strict than other students, I don't particularly think so. I think it's kind of the way he was taught as well. My grandfather was extremely strict. So if you speak to my dad, according to him, he's very lenient. He's like, you should have seen the way my father taught me. So I think it's always kind of depends on the kind of lens that you're looking at things. But I think he's always been such a perfectionist himself. So that's kind of the standard he wants to kind of inculcate in everybody around him. So I think initially when you're growing up, or when you do something that's not at the level it should be, and you get kind of harsh criticism at that point, you feel very sorry for yourself, and you feel like, oh my God, why is he being mean, or why is this not working, or all of that. But then I remember him also telling me, he's like, would you rather me tell you something or an audience member tell you something? So I think if you look at it like from 2 steps back, like now I'm very grateful for that kind of training where yes, there is understanding, but there is not too much scope for unnecessary excuses. Because I think if you start finding excuses for yourself, you'll always find 100 reasons.
True, very true. So, how does your mood impact your music as well as your practice? Generally, how important is your state of mind? How's your mood?
Well, I think that's something I perhaps gave a lot more thought to maybe in the last 10 years. I think before that, I would kind of ignore all of that and say, okay, fine, morning time, I need to work on technique. And once I come back, I work a little bit more on technique, or maybe a varnam or something. And then in the evening, I work on pieces. So that kind of regiment was there, and it didn't matter how I felt. But I think kind of as I grew older, and then the way I kind of practice, that has changed a lot. And I think also sometimes at this age, I feel also, I think when you're kind of a different stage of your learning, different things are important. So for example, sometimes there are days where I don't feel like practicing scales, or I don't feel like picking up the violin and doing like, say, okay, I'm going to do this improvisation with just half hour, then I'm again and again for 30 minutes, and let's see how many things I can come up with without repeating. Some days are like that. Some days I just I think it's natural when you're not in that state of mind to sit and do those hours. But then maybe on those days, I will try to listen to other people's music, or I will try to kind of analyze somebody else's music that I really love, or you try to like I also enjoy playing the piano. So sometimes if I don't feel like playing the violin, like okay, let me play the piano, and it's completely different music. So there I'm playing more Western classical. So it takes you somewhere else. So you're still doing music. You're still trying to improve. But then you realize that it doesn't always have to be the same thing every day, because sometimes that can be counterproductive.
Exactly, very true. I was actually going to ask you something related. Would do you sometimes feel so saturated that you feel like taking a break from music itself? Or if yes, then what do you go to? So you did mention that you will go to other artists, you go and listen to other artists. Even then, it becomes, like because you're a student of music and you're trying to learn always, the mind becomes analytical. It doesn't relax and say, okay, I just want to listen. It's very hard. So do you sometimes feel like taking a break totally from music? If yes, what else do you go to?
So I think that is a very relevant question, especially during this time. So I think last year, when the lockdown first happened and all of that, I was in a very, very productive kind of mind space. And of course, at that time, the thought was, okay, it'll be 2 weeks, or it'll be 4 weeks, it'll be 6 weeks, and then things will kind of go back to normal right at the beginning. So that time I was extremely productive. I was practicing probably more than I had in years. And you're not worrying about practicing for a concert, but you're just like, okay, now I don't have this concert in 5 days or this concert in 10 days. I can just practice to improve what I'm doing overall. So that segment I was in a different headspace. But I would say recently, when this kind of second wave, the waves kind of hit and everything, there are times where the mental space is completely different, and you're hearing so much news from different people, and there are times when you sometimes when you need music, sometimes when I as an artist kind of want to put the violin down and do something else to kind of get my mind off things. So I do enjoy watching sports. Recently I've also enjoyed playing video games. I kind of find that totally takes my mind off things. So I think sometimes it's important to be able to completely disconnect, and so then when you come back, then you're really coming back refreshed, and you're coming from a good space.
Yeah, definitely yes. So you mentioned sports. Any particular sport and any particular personality that you really admire?
Yeah, so I think cricket is something that I really enjoy. There used to be a time where I really loved playing cricket as well. Of course, with the tennis ball, not with the cricket ball. But yeah, I enjoy watching cricket probably a little bit too much. When there's cricket season, I don't get much done in the evenings. But yeah, I think sometimes it's healthy to have a kind of a nice hobby on the side. So it's not. I think that has kind of changed in my thought process. I think when I was growing up, I used to think that it's very important to just think about music and music and music, which maybe was required at that time. Now I find the value in having a few other things in life that can take your mind off music from time to time.
Great. So you seem to be very comfortable in quite a few forms of music, classical forms included, and Western classical, as you mentioned, you also play the piano. How much of it has been purely exposure? How much of it has been hands-on learning? And how much of it has been like really conscious that I need this or I want this that way?
So I think it starts with exposure, but then if you want to kind of do anything properly, you need to spend that time and learn that particular genre. I think uh, it's important to give that respect to whatever art form that you're doing. So if you want to kind of learn Western music, or if you then you need to spend those hours, the same amount of time or same amount of respect that you give to, say, Indian classical music, that same amount of rigor needs to go. Sometimes I find that if I'm trying to learn a totally different skill set, it'll take more rigor for me because, say, if something comes a bit easier in comparison, say with the violin or with Carnatic music, if I'm trying to learn something completely new, it may take me twice the amount of time to get to 50% of what I'm doing there. So I think that kind of hands-on kind of learning is very important, and you have to learn with whatever best resources you have. If you have access to a wonderful performer, wonderful teacher, I think it's important to kind of try your best and learn from those amazing people around you.
Yeah, so most musicians, they are visible on the scene once they have reached a certain level and they have like really come up slowly from small concerts to big concerts. But you were there with your father, like accompanying him on his tours and everything, and there was always a spotlight on you, right? It would have been right from your formative years and everything. So did you, I'm sure your father never put that pressure on you, as you have also mentioned how he interacts with you and everything, but did you feel a pressure internally on how your music should be, or how it is being expected from you, and because of the spotlight constantly on you even in those years, formative years?
Well, I think a couple of things worked well for me in the sense that I think the first time I was on stage, I was 6 years old. And I think at that time, you're not really worrying about any of these things. So I just kind of went on stage. I enjoyed what I was doing, came back. I wasn't really thinking about how I was being viewed as an artist or how I was being viewed as El Subramaniam's son or any of those things. I think it's very important. This is something that we also work a lot at our music academy at SAPA. That when somebody is young, it's very important that they have some positive experiences on stage. And I think having positive experiences on stage isn't necessarily always linked to skill. So I could have been playing total rubbish at that time, but I went on stage, came off stage feeling good. And I think that is very important. Because at that age, you can always be compared, or at any age, like comparisons, there is no way to stop that. There is no way to kind of say that you should be at this level. If you're here, you should be here. If you're here, you should be here. So I think to kind of acknowledge that is very important. So I think I was lucky to have some very positive influences and positive experiences when I was growing up. And I think this kind of pressure I felt only a lot later, because then possibly if I had started playing on stage when I was 17, 18, 19, then I would have felt so much more pressure. I would have felt all the things that are kind of going on. Somebody says something, I may have taken it very personally. But then I realized that it's important to kind of look at things somewhat dispassionately. So if because like I started playing with Appa regularly on stage from the time I was 13, and if I had a good show, people would come to me and say that you're just like your father. You can play everything like your father. Comparison would be there. If I had a bad show, you're nothing like your father. Look where he is. Look where you are. So there was no in between. So, but I think it's important to kind of respect what people are saying, but to some extent have kind of people that you trust and you value their opinion, and you understand where they're coming from, and you really try to improve based on what they are saying, and then everything else you take with a pinch of salt. If somebody says you've done a great job, doesn't mean that you are suddenly the greatest violinist ever to be born. If somebody says you're horrible, doesn't mean that you need to throw the violin away and take up something else. So I think that kind of mental balance is very important. I think it's also important in a time of social media. I think this is something I kind of consciously do, because I think it's important for artists who are younger, teenage kids coming up, or young artists coming up, to also see. So I make a point never to kind of delete a negative comment or remove something that somebody says, because it's important to kind of see that, okay, fine, this is somebody's opinion, that's okay. And I think it's important to kind of to see that positivity and negativity, and it's important not to let that affect what you want to do, because if you are able to kind of make the music that you want, if you are able to kind of be happy with what you are creating, and if you're happy with the path that you're taking, then there will always be people who will be happy with it. There will always be people who don't appreciate what you're doing, and that's fine.
Balance is key, I guess. So, dear viewers, we will take a short break in the sense 1 episode long break. So we'll continue this conversation through into the second episode. Keep watching out for that, and we will also notify you well in advance. And this was the person that Shri Ambi Subramaniam is and where he has reached. We'll be talking about his art and his life in the forthcoming episodes. Stay tuned. Stay safe.